Hello, my name is Visgluigers and welcome to Armored Warfare. And today, all jokes aside, I'm gonna briefly talk about my experiences on the global operations on the public test server. And just to give quick summarize, it's not as groundbreaking as maybe a lot of people has led you to believe. But that's all up for debate. Because I can see that this mode has a hell of a lot of potential. And I feel like they've made this kind of platform and now they're starting to build up on it. Or at least that's what I hope. Because at the end of the day, it is a PvP game mode. So if you absolutely despise PvP, you're not most likely going to like this game mode too either, because it is mostly PvP with quite a lot of PvE elements to it, but at the end of the day it is a PvP game mode. So for instance, as it is a PvP mode, one of the biggest problems I personally have in the PvP mode is the fact that the tier scaling, in my opinion, is not quite right in Armored Warfare. Because a really good example is that you are in a main battle tank and everyone else is 2 tiers higher than you. It pretty much doesn't matter what class they are and what tank specifically they are. If they are 2 tiers higher and they're player controlled, you pretty much have no chance in 1 versus 1 situation. If you come across someone and they see you, you see them, you're going to die. Unless the other player really screws majorly something. Because especially if you are in the main battle tank, everyone will just penetrate your frontal hull armor like it's nothing. You're slow and your gun isn't the best and so forth. It's really just like, well, what the fuck am I doing here anyway? So that might be addressed in the upcoming Balance 2.0, or at least I hope that will be addressed. And in comparison to like World of Tanks, of course it's somewhat the same situation, but I feel like in World of Tanks there's like, to some degree of you can do something, but in Armored Warfare it's very like, well, if you are the underdog, you're probably gonna just be a cannon fodder. And what they have done is alleviate that a bit by the unlimited respawns. But if you're driving a main battle tank and you're slow, and it gets time in these big maps to get into the action, and you die constantly the minute you see someone, it quite quickly becomes just this, well, I'm this cannon fodder and I just go into the city and get slapped, and then I respawn, and then I slowly get into the city and get slapped again. So it's not exactly really fun. But also the dying part is no longer so much the problem. In regular PvP, when you die just because you're 2 tiers lower, or you just happen to have bad luck or did a dumb decision or something like that, I personally get quite salty, because you invested a decent amount of time sitting in the queue and loading the game and driving somewhere, and then you get killed, and it's, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. In this game mode, it's not so much the dying that is the problem, because you get the respawn and so forth. It depends on the class, but especially in the slower MPTs, the salty part comes when you have to slowly drag your ass into the action again and again and again. And speaking of getting into the action and doing shit, the team play is extremely important in this game mode. More so in any game mode so far. In PvP, like in regular PvP, it's pretty much just kill all the enemies or capture your base. And it doesn't require a whole lot of team play or team effort. Like the most of the games, it doesn't really require a lot of cooperation to be a successful win in PvP. In PvE, quite same thing. Someone has to take the hit and go for the secondaries or whatever, but it doesn't like require. Of course, in both game modes, it helps tremendously to have team effort and synergy between the players, but it's not a requirement. If everyone just solos and does that soloing well, it works. In this game mode, soloing does not work. It doesn't work. You really need like team effort, and everyone has to be on the game and be on the map and be on the move, so forth. And I had most of my games, unluckily, that I had maybe newer players to the game mode and so forth, just camping outside the cities and outside of the cap circles, and every single time the enemy team capped all or most of the cap circles, and obviously we lost every single game. So you really need to be on the ball. What do we need to do? We need to go in and just do it as a team. If you do it alone, you're just gonna die like that. You're gonna be toast, because there's gonna be a couple of AI controlled vehicles, and of course they're gonna target you because shit out of luck. And if there's even 2 enemy opponents, you're gonna get toasted, because they are not afraid of dying, because they know if they die, they're 30 seconds they're back in. They gank up on you really quickly and you're dead really, really fast. So you really need that team effort. You need those buddies behind you when you go in. You can't just go in alone, because then you're gonna die. But if you have that team, even if there's a lot like so much synergy between you and the nearest teammate, but if you just go in and have this mindset that we need to capture this same area, it works. But if not, well, you're quite much doomed, because you can't do it alone. And speaking of you can't do this shit alone and need teammates, platoons are now 10 times more efficient, because you perhaps have voice communications and stuff like that. You can really just coordinate so much more and take out key opponents and key objectives with a huge efficiency. And I feel like the small amount of games that I have played, the winning team has always had a platoon or 2 who has done really good in that game. And I feel like that is something that, goes without saying, but it kind of surprised me still that how exactly well it works, especially since the games that I've been getting into have not been fully populated all the time. Then it's like even more when it's, I don't know, was it 7 or 8 versus 8 or whatever. It really, really, really comes like you can't spare in every objective a lot of people, because there's just 8 of you, and you go alone somewhere and then there's a platoon who just wipes you out. It's bound to happen, and it will happen. And I've only met 2-man platoons. I can't even imagine how good a 3-man platoon is, who are remotely good at the game. And then speaking of the spread out, because of the maps are really big. So I see it as a plus-minus-0 situation, because the maps are big, great. There's a lot of play area, great. But what if you are in a slow tank? When you die, you have a humongous ride to the next objective or to the action or so forth. It's like, it gets kind of tedious, and that's why a lot of light tanks and AFVs are the preferred choice of the game. But at the same time, if you are planning to go to the city area in which most of the objectives are, you wanna be in a main battle tank. But it's a bit like, I feel like no class, in exception of the artillery that I haven't tried, feels like they're not as enjoyable as you'd like. But I feel like that also in regular PvP. But I think because the main battle tanks are the kings of the city battles, but it takes time and effort to get into the city, and if you're not the top tier player in the city, you might as well not even bother, because your armor counts for nothing at that point. And light tanks and AFVs, you're gonna get slaughtered in the city. TDs, kinda the same thing. It's a bit odd, but maybe it's a bit odd game mode, you know, in that sense. But perhaps it just takes some time to get used to it. And of course, a lot of the blame goes to the test server, because of its population is so incredibly small and so forth. And also all the games have been tier 10 games, which I am not so accustomed to. And yeah, I would have liked to try with tier 6s or even 8s, but no such luck. Or every time I get into a tier 8 vehicle, welcome to tier 10, and yeah, it's pretty much game over at that point. So then, to summarize this all, the game mode is okay. It's not inherently good or inherently bad. I feel like this will be a game mode for a lot of people. I will play it occasionally, especially if I'm with a platoon. But on my own, it is a PvP game mode. And I don't so much enjoy PvP. I don't know what's with it, but I just find the PvE game mode so much more enjoyable. But this game mode, it didn't like majorly win me over, but it's playable. It's very, very playable. The frustrations just come in if your team is not playing the objective. And you feel like, well, what is a one man to do? If you are in a platoon, at least you can take on an objective by yourself with a 3-man platoon, but if you're just playing solo, well, good luck. It's gonna be really hard. But the idea of this game mode is really good. The wild cards are really nice. The multiple objectives give it like flexibility. Maybe some flank is really hard and you can just spawn in the different side of the map and take out an unprotected objective. Stuff like that are like endless. And I'm really waiting to see what this game mode really looks like in the live server and not in the test server, where, yeah, it's a test server. It's not as bad as World of Tanks test server, but it's nonetheless, it's a test server. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I do hope I'll see you in the next video.